No, not to me. I'll allow Dan to go ahead and introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Dan Opart, pronouns he or they. I am the managing attorney in Team Child Spokane office.
Hi, and I am Shereese Rhodes, one of the coordinators for South King County Discipline Coalition. And I guess I'll also talk about what we are and what we do. So what we do and our aim is to eliminate the school to prison pipeline. And as many of you know, there's like so many different areas in which that can start up, happen. Our primary focus is those Black and Brown children, but we know those with IEPs, 504s, right? Like it's hit a little harder. To say a little bit about what brings me into the work is I was one of those parents who had that child that was always extremely disciplined on the harsh end. And then when it was, oh, well, we have this IEP and these 504 things that could help, I felt like it put a bigger target on his back. So my aim is to be that parent that I wish that I had, to be that support for those youth, and also those parents while they're going through it. Reason why I'm a little distracted is because of the fact that crisis doesn't have an hour, right? And but I'm focused, I'm here. Other things that we do is like we do advocacy trainings, like we have a know your rights training when it comes to discipline. We try to build up and empower community, right? Like in whatever needs that they feel like they need. And this is an amazing opportunity that now we're being able to give some of those parents that we've given some of these gifts to, the opportunity to give those gifts through stories to you guys. Because the one thing that we know is data, as it's great in some ways, it doesn't really give a whole picture. And I appreciate you guys giving us the opportunity to kind of fill in some of those holes, some of those gaps, kind of to help you guys understand the bigger picture when it comes to these parents and these youth. At this time, I want to give the parents the opportunity to kind of introduce themselves. First parent I see on camera is Krystina.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Krystina Cummins, and I live in South King County, obviously. I have 7 children in the school system right now, 1 in middle school, 1 in early learning. That's my Great Dane. Too bad he can't go to school. And then 5 within the elementary school system. So thank you, Shereese, for having me. Thank you all of you. And who am I passing it to?
Thank you, Krystina. Next, Emijah.
Thank you, Shereese. My computer's a little bit slow. Hi, everyone. My name is Emijah Smith. I term myself as a community queen because of the work that I do in community, and I'm in so many at multiple policy tables around education, and particularly criminal justice reform. I come here, well, my number one role always will be a mother. I'm a grandmother, so I want to bring that to the space, but I also want to bring into the space, you know, I'm an advisor with South King County Discipline Coalition, was there at the start of the inception and the relationship between the South King County Discipline Coalition and Team Child. And I want to highlight that all of us here are bring a different level of experience, but I just really want to honor the mothers who are here sharing their story, including myself, of us having some lived experience in that space. So that's why I'm here today, to share that. But in no way do I want others to minimize what us mothers endure, because I have a background. I have a master's in public administration from the University of Washington. they're of the Evans School of I think it's governance and policy. They renamed it from when I was there. You know, I've just been on so many policy tables around education, advocated for policy on the state level, at our state legislature, whether it's education bills or justice reform bills. So I just want to say, as though I stand here and I speak as a mother with lived experience with children in the schools, talking to other family members who experience the truancy bill, the Becca bill, those type of things. I don't. The wealth of knowledge and experience that a lot of us bring in this space as we talk and we come from a family perspective is it's invaluable. That's what I want to share. So thank you for allowing me the introduction.
Next, Latae.
Hi, I'm Latae Mitchell, and I am a mother of 5 and a grandmother of 3. And I've had experience with the Becca bill, and I've had multiple experiences, and I'm just going to name 3 of the school districts: Tacoma, Franklin Pierce, and Seattle School District as well. And I'm just here to share my personal experience.
Thank you, Latae. Next, I'm not sure if I missed them coming in. We have a Tafra. If you're here, could you introduce yourself? Okay.
I've been keeping a check on the attendees, Shereese, for our other speakers. I will add them into the pins if I see them.
Okay, thank you. And the last one would be Drema, but okay. So with that, the introductions, I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Karen to kick off the first question.
Okay, so I think what the frame we wanted to start with today was just having people share the way Becca laws, especially truancy, but Becca in whatever form, has impacted you. Or another way of commenting on that is just to provide some examples of the way that schools, courts, and the systems that sort of intertwine there have failed to provide welcoming space, have failed to offer the supports and solutions that you've needed. Yeah, I think we're starting with identifying those issues and trying to highlight the impact, especially for the families of Becca. So, Shereese, do you want to specifically ask people to respond, or do you want to wait until someone sort of feels like they want to begin that response?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and we'll start off with Krystina since she started off with introductions. So how are these impacted your family?
The impact of the school system just all around. Like I tell people when they leave early learning just to go into regular K through 12 system, the school district, the school system is a monster that you're not ready to take on, especially when advocating for your children. And if you never really advocated for your child, or like when it comes to their needs, I've been shut down so many times. Right now, an example is my daughter, she's 10, my oldest daughter, and she was diagnosed to be on the spectrum recently. And all last year, she's always had a 504 plan since first grade. In Federal Way, they were very helpful in getting me that. And that's because my oldest child, he had a 504 plan at that time. So I knew kind of a little bit about them and how to advocate for them. And then started going to South King County Discipline Coalition, the Know Your Rights training, learning more about like what I'm allowed to do, like asking for them to test my daughter, to, so on and so forth, all the different things that I knew nothing about when entering the school system. So again, she was diagnosed to be on the spectrum recently. And she's always struggled in school. You know, in second grade, we had mentioned something. She, you know, she has very bad vision. She has a 200 vision in one eye and 10 in the other eye. And, you know, I had mentioned maybe dyslexia or anything. And they said, oh, well, we can't test for that. We can't do anything about that because she's too young. But moving forward, last year after the pandemic, like going into hybrid, so she's half online and half in person, and she just struggled so hard. And I advocated and I wrote letters. She needs to be tested for an IEP. Please test her for an IEP. Let's get this in place so she has the supports needed so that she can succeed, because education is important. And she was feeling very defeated, as was I. Every meeting that I had, oh, we don't need to test her. Let's wait till we're in person next year and see how she's doing next year, so on and so forth. And I just pushed for it. They never budged. The school district wouldn't test her, even after writing letter after letter, meeting with principal multiple times, meeting with multiple teachers and psychologists, even her primary care physician that's cared for her since she was younger. Since she was born, basically, wrote a letter. The autism clinic at Children's wrote a letter, and they just wouldn't budge. Her teacher denied that there was anything going on with her, even though, you know, you could tell she's not doing her homework, and her iReady scores are very low. Thankfully, this year, her first week doing homework with her, we spent every night working on it. The last night that we worked on it, I spent over 2 hours, and she left crying that she couldn't finish it. She wasn't understanding how to do certain things or what different things. She didn't even understand what a paragraph was. Like, she had to write a paragraph about what her favorite movie is and why. And she's like, I like this movie because, first she started it with because, and, you know, just going into explaining it to her. So I wrote a email to the teacher and included the same principal that I've been dealing with. And I'm thankful that the teacher that I have this year is more understanding, because that's a lot of it. Is like, you have some teachers that push back, and then you have some teachers that are like, okay, let's be supportive. What are her strengths? What do you see in your child? And that's been very helpful this year. And we're already getting her on the road to be tested for an IEP. And it's hard because I know that she needs an IEP. I know that she needs extra supports, and to be able to go and have that one-on-one that she really needs. But it's frustrating that if you're sitting there telling the same people that, or multiple people this, and they're not listening to you because they don't want to do the work, or they don't want to do this, or they don't want to listen to you, or they see something different. It's like, I'm with my child, I'm doing work with them. She might act different at school, but I know how she is at home, and I've lived her whole life with her. And why don't you listen to parents? It's just very frustrating. And I'm thankful that her teacher this year is like, okay, let's see what strengths she has. You know, she's already started, even though she doesn't have an IEP in place yet, or hasn't been tested yet, they already started altering her homework, and she's giving her more one-on-one time and so on. And I'm very thankful, because without the South King County Discipline Coalition and knowing like what rights I have as a parent and what rights my daughter has as a student, I don't think I would be where I am today within the school district, with any of my children, honestly.
Thank you. Emijah, how has it been harmful for your family?
Yeah.
You know, I know that I'm following
I saw you.
Krystina. So when you say that, is it the Becca bill per se that we're asking what's harmful, or we're talking about the lack of advocacy that's harmful?
Becca bill.
When I think about the Becca bill specifically, and the harm that I believe it presents, specifically because I think the people who often, the systems, the decision makers who are creating the policy are not taking into account the lived experiences of the families who are most impacted. I don't think that the Becca bill isn't connecting the decisions within it with other institutions of government. So, right, this would be, people look at the Becca bill as being an education policy that's so very much connected to the child welfare system. So in my experience, advocating and learning about particularly Seattle Public Schools for a number of years. They have this, the attendance lady. So I think it's a lot of racism that's at play, and it's a lot of power, abuse of power within the schools, because people want you to give your power of your child over once you bring them to the school, as though they know best, when sometimes they don't even have children. How could you know best? Or you're not walking in my shoes. So the anti-Blackness that's normalized there, that's an issue. Because if you see me come into the school, you're too often thinking, I don't know what's best for my child as a mother. You think you know better. When my ancestors not only raised their children, they was raising the slave master's children, right? In a forced way. So they raised this generation, or raised this country in so many fashions. So that level of disrespect when you come in, right? And if you do know your rights and you have some sense of courage, because it takes courage to speak against whatever, maybe it's your value system that you divert to the teacher as knowing best, then there's a pushback versus a welcoming instead of working together. So I think there's a lack of partnership. There's a lack of first getting the voice of those who have the lived experience, who are impacted by the policy, to co-design, to have their leadership shared, and to make sure it's compensated. I don't need some young person just got out of college, interested in just going to dabble into communities that look different than theirs, trying to tell me about how to move through my community and how to raise my children. So my experience coming into a Title I school, very diverse, in kindergarten with my first son, Black male, the culture of the school, majority Asian American, people did not step into class on time. It was culturally the culture of the school. You're coming into the door on time, but you may not be sitting down on time. I live in the community where the school is at. And for some reason, the attendance lady didn't like me, or didn't like my confidence or my love and advocacy for my children. So started complaining about me being 2 minutes late here and there at the school. Not the majority of our kids coming there, but for some reason poking at my family. Now, wasn't absent from school, because only time we were absent is if he had a medical reason, dental appointment, something like that. And that would be like maybe 4 times out the year, because we do get sick, but we're actually a very healthy family. And so they went to try to put my family through the truancy process, because we'd be a couple minutes late. And the reason we'd be more late is because I wanted to make sure they had breakfast. If you missed breakfast by a certain time, you couldn't have the breakfast, but they didn't want to eat the breakfast. If my son didn't have a good breakfast, then that could have a long-term effect of, I think, of grouchiness or what have you at the school. So I wanted to make sure he had a healthy breakfast. So they called down at the district when he was 5 in kindergarten, wanting to do a truancy petition, and was told that they couldn't because he wasn't 6. So they waited the day after he turned 6 to then push it. Will say I'm not that parent that people think someone's coming in there, cussing you out, doing all the stereotypical things. I'm actually that parent, drop my children off, pick them up, stay in the classroom, help with the kids in the classroom, because I think that's partnership is important. So to do that was very hurtful to me. And then that's when I learned about the truancy bill. I heard about the Becca bill. You think about teenagers running away, but you don't think about your elementary school students who haven't run away. You might think about families who haven't brought their kids for a couple of weeks or a week, whatever. You want to find out what's going on, but not a parent who's there every single day. You see them come into the school building every single day, just about. And you're doing these underhanded things. So I looked it up and found out that the school is supposed to connect with the family first, find out if they need some resources, try to support the family with the resources. And if they're just like negligent of those resources, then they can put a petition forward. And that never happened. And because that didn't happen, really just kind of broke what I thought was a decent relationship with myself and the school. And then I was talking to other parents and was finding out this was happening at different elementary schools in the neighborhood. And they were mainly coming from the secretary who does the attendance. And these are Black families I'm speaking with, and for some reason the secretaries are white. So you're gonna automatically think that there's racism involved in that. But then when you see the systems of that school come behind the school and support it, you're just like, just really thrown off. So what I think could happen is that real resources, real funding, not just something that's put in a policy to say, support the family, but you have to resource the mandate that you're putting forward to support the family, and that you should never want to send a family to a family court if there is nothing like there abuse is involved or anything like that. That makes families scared to talk about what's going on with them, and it makes you just try to, you might want to leave and go to a different school, which I don't think is healthy to be moving kids around if they don't need to. But if you feel like there's opposition when you walk there into the school building, it's just not healthy for the family. I also think that it should be clear, they send out discipline, kind of discipline rights, student rights at the beginning of the school year. There should be something that talks to families about attendance, because as it changes, I know that attendance is attached to money. And everybody's up there talking about, learning loss if you're not in the classroom. It's attached to how much money comes with that student and reports. So we all care. Parents want their kids to be successful. Most parents want to see their kids do better than them. So when you start understanding that there's money attached to attendance in the school and it's following, then you start seeing why these the leadership is really bothering you, but they also are just abusive. And it's just too often. And so to have my family threatened to go through a family court was crazy. And I think over time, like the family courts have been deciding to push that back to the district, like put overflowing our courts with these petty petitions. But once you do that and you get families into that system, that's a whole nother like beast of itself. That's hard to come out. That labels are placed on families. That affects our jobs, that affects things in a whole nother way. I didn't make it to the family court because I advocated and I wasn't afraid, but believe me, I watched how they kept trying to do it. From kindergarten to waiting till he was 6 to all these things, and why our leadership would do such things to Black families, Indigenous families, Latino families. When you see who's disproportionately affected, you just see that it's systemic racism based on privilege, that one person can have an attitude and they're not being checked about it, and then they're just believed rather than having a conversation and sitting down with that family. That's basically what I want to share. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emijah, for dropping those gems. Now, Latae, how did it affect your family?
Well, when I think about the Becca bill, I think about something that's fear-based, and it was always, to me, taken as a threat. I feel that it criminalized my child. I'm just going to focus on one child that I had, the one that I had the issue with, that I had to go to court for and different things like that. I just felt like he was criminalized, and as I was as well. And we actually, this particular time when we were going through that, we lived in a cul-de-sac directly behind the school. But the issue was that my son had some behavioral issues accompanied with ADHD. So he had ADHD, some extreme, all three kinds. He had some extreme impulsivity issues. We're finding out a lot of things about him. He had severe allergies, and he had some sensory issues. He did not like to keep clothes on. I'm just giving some examples. He was very hard to sit still, often itching, and we tried, just so many things for him to help him. I did get the wraparound services. I got him diagnosed and tried to take him to who they said was the best person to go to. They said, I believe it's been so many years, but I believe it was Dr. Rhodes at CCS. And I tried to get all the help, the IEP, the wraparound services, the family advocate. and all of those things. But the people that were supposed to be our advocates actually turned into our attackers. And I don't, I'm trying to, I'm not, I don't want it to be minimized, you know, because that's really the way I deem it today when I step back and look at everything. And when I heard the prison, the school to prison pipeline mentioned, it really strikes a chord with me, because that particular child now has become an adult and he is in prison. And initially, his first issues with the courts and all those kind of things were based on this Becca bill. You know what I mean? It started off here, him as a criminal. When he had impulsivity issues, he was bullied at school. He would run away from the school premises. And then when he wasn't running away, he was often suspended. So his whole education was disrupted based on his behaviors, based on his disability, and him kind of being singled out. Now, we're African American and Peruvian, our family, and initially dad wasn't in the home. And then we did marry, but later, this basically, if I could sum this all up, this issue with the Becca bill, us ending up in court, was basically the beginning of the unraveling of our family. So the people that came and did this so-called family reconciliation, I think that's what they call it. They have family reconciliation through, you know, when it goes into the CPS level, they actually, it was a lot. They actually tried to encourage my husband and I to divorce, my ex-husband now, to divorce. And really, it split the family apart. It was a very fear-based situation, and that's the best way that I can explain it. There was when it was just like the last time when we discussed, there were so many issues that happened, even within the service providers. I had so many extreme situations that were very unique, that people were just like, what in the world? The wraparound services left my son attended at a park, and I had to go searching for my son one day way out in Lakewood, and we lived in Tacoma. There were so many extreme issues where we became homeless. Those things weren't taken into account. We were going through a divorce. There were so many traumas that were happening within the family. The death of my father. It was so extreme, and it felt like the people that were supposed to be the advocates for us, that I opened up to, actually took those words and they became a sword in their hand, and it really broke our family unit down, and we never recovered from it. And that's the best way that I could say it. The family was never reconciled. My husband and I stayed divorced, and the children were separated. Whether they were affected, it started off with the one child in this bill, and then it just became a prying and a searching. It was like they were just so adamant about finding fault in our family unit and ways to separate us. And I do realize today, after listening to things, that it may have been based on race. Unfortunately, did somebody ask me to pause or stop, interrupt? I thought I heard someone. Also, I do believe that it may have been a racial motivation. I always try to give people the benefit of the doubt and not think like that. But because I experienced these things in multiple school districts, that's where I got the idea that, wait a second, there's a pattern here. And then I just wanted to also say that it's such a vulnerable area for me. So I want to try to just condense it and say that it was the start of I just go back to, it was the start of the unraveling of our family. And if I could say something that would have been done better, I would have guarded myself and children more and not given them so much personal information about us. The example that I used was there was an incident at the house where the dad breaks a plate, and I talk to them about it and say, this is what we experienced, and they turn it into domestic violence and a CPS report, and it's like a snowball, and you just, once it gets going, you get overwhelmed and you're taken up in it, and so I can just say that if I could say something that would make the situation, would have made it better, is that the school would be, that the programs would be more cohesive with the family, and that it wouldn't be us against them. It would be more of the actual advocacy that they claim that they were offering. It would have been awesome to have some of those actually come through, which they didn't. And I just want to make it clear, I did have a support system of my mother, and I did have the support of their father. I was not a single mom, but at the end of my experience, I was not only single, I did not have a husband, and I was no longer married, and I no longer had custody of my children. So this so-called family reunification and the wraparound services actually did the very opposite. The very opposite was produced from what they said that they were going to help us with. It actually turned out the opposite. And my son never completed school. He never got a GED. School was the last place that he wanted to be. And so I really would like to see a change. I would like to see some more advocates in there of color. I would like to see some natives, some African Americans, Hispanic, all people represented, so that it can be less bias. And also that front desk, when Emijah talked about the front desk person, I did experience that, but I try not to hone in on one person, because I knew it wasn't one person when I went to different school districts, and it was the same. So it was almost like a target group. And with us coming out of poverty, I think that we were easy targets for them. I couldn't say, hey, I'm going to call my attorney, or, I didn't have any knowledge about how the system works. It was only a fear-based situation, where my concern was, if I don't share, I'm going to lose my kids. I'm going to lose my rights. And in sharing, I still did. And so I just want to now, as a grandma, make sure that these cycles don't continue, and that we can things will be better for the next generation. Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you, Latae. So going into a little bit of my own experience with Becca, I'm parent of two. So with my son, he experienced extreme bullying at school. We would teach him to do the things, right? Like tell someone, speak up, right? Got to the point where nothing was happening. He felt like it was getting to the point where he needed to defend himself. Then when it got to that point, he was like, why do I even try? I don't want to go. It was hard for me that when Becca came in, and I thought it was going to be something that was going to be a saving grace, right? Like it was going to help our family, that, my son is now an adult. There's no reason why something that was supposed to help him put him in institutions, right? One time it was Fairfax Children's, and then also juvenile detention. I want to mention that because of the fact, as an adult, he's never had to deal with any of that. 25 years old, but from the age of 6 all the way to 16, when he was just done with it, that was the go-to. Want to also explain my experience with my daughter. We lost my mother, her grandmother, not that long ago. At this time, I don't know what my culture belief it was. too, because of the fact that my mom did not want to go to a nursing home to give her that care that she wanted, right? That was, in my culture, that's what we do, right? Like, we take care of. But you should never put a parent in a situation where now I am trying to be the best parent for my daughter and also the best daughter for my parent, right? Where all they cared about is my daughter being in the seat. They didn't care about that my daughter was experiencing a great loss. And let's talk about that attendance lady. It's like, yes, I'm giving you the information. I'm letting you know what's going on with our family. But it's also disheartening when the only thing she wanted to talk about was her being in the seat. And even at the times when my daughter was in the seat, mentally, she was not there because of the fact that she was wondering when she got back home if grandma would have passed. And we still deal with this to this day. She was given an award at school, and she was at school, and she doesn't care about that award. What she cares about, though, is that she was not there with her grandmother while she passed. At this point, I'm going to pass it back to Karen, and because our stories are not our stories alone. And there's also data that kind of helps, with framing some of these stories. So I'm going to collect myself, pass it to you for a second.
Thank you so much, Krystina and Emijah and Latae and Shereese. They are really powerful examples of building systems and structures that really haven't centered the Black family, centered Indigenous families, centered families of color, and really haven't included them in the building of the system and structure, right? So I know that this conference hopefully is going to look forward to figure out how to do better. Just as a reminder, I think, to sort of underscore these individual stories, I think we got to this conference and got to this place in Becca because there's hundreds or if not thousands of these stories and a lot of data that indicates a couple things, right? That Black students, Indigenous students, Latino students in particular, were significantly overrepresented in truancy, right? More disproportionately represented in truancy, as were students experiencing homelessness, students with IEPs and disabilities, and students who speak multiple languages. And as a lawyer who's an advocate for families and who is trying to apply law on behalf of families and students, it's so frustrating to know that these laws are built with this idea of help and support, and to see them applied in a harmful way. To think about the students that we've identified as needing the most support, students who are experiencing homelessness or disability, or have the skills of multiple languages, right, and then being sort of overrepresented and targeted in these harmful systems and structures. It's a frustration. So I'm really grateful that we are where we are. I'm sad that it took a long time to get to where we are. And to me, where we are is, here's the landscape as I see it, I guess, as an advocate. We're not going to put young people in detention anymore. There has never been data on any level that has demonstrated that detention improves behavior for any reason, not in the criminal system, not in the truancy system. There is literally no data that putting kids in a jail or prison improves their behavior, improves the society. So thank goodness we're finally here in a place where that's not going to happen. And we're in a place where there's a really strong message from the new law and from the expectation of these community engagement boards that we're going to think really differently about what it means to respond to students who need help, and students especially, in this context, who aren't attending school. So it's really good that we're looking in that direction. And I guess I just want to add that, as an advocate, as someone who was trained as an attorney, I think it might be true for people trained to be teachers or educators or trained to be judges or court personnel. I think it's really easy to get caught up in an assumption that we do have great ideas and that we can potentially solve problems that we see in our culture and our society. I think one of the things I've learned the most about that from the South King County Discipline Coalition is that the people who have traveled through these systems and had to be sort of on the receiving end of them are the people best situated to really figure out what would work for them and what does work for them. And if they're not centered and engaged, and if you're not sharing the decision-making power with them to figure that out, or just handing the decision-making power over to them, I don't think we're not going to get to the solution. I think that would be a real barrier. So for individual school districts, for individual communities, figuring out who are the community people that need to be in the center and whose voices need to be leading what you're building in the future, I think is really important. And I think those community engagement boards give you that opportunity. Maybe some of the next policy steps have to do with how the money flows and who gets the money to help support that. I think there's still a lot of money caught up in paying school district staff, like truancy officers, or I guess I don't know what they're calling the attendance people, right? But there's a lot of possibility maybe for us to think about resources in the future. I wanted to ask if the parents are willing to say anything more about what they would envision for the future. Sort of go back to everyone and ask for more input or ideas or suggestions or reflections. What would you hope your community school district and the state of Washington collectively would be building going forward for students who are not attending school or struggling to attend school, and for the families that are supporting them in particular? I think focusing on that, but in regards to just making the school environment even a place that where your student might not struggle to attend, right? Like, what are some of the things that you would really hope for or wish for? If there's more that you'd like to say about that, I just wanted to create that space. Shereese, do you want to facilitate through that? Or Krystina, if you want to jump in? I don't want to keep making you go first just because you had done it before. So I'll leave it open to you.
I can just go ahead and jump in so Shereese doesn't have to. One thing I want to piggyback off of Emijah and Latae, definitely need more people of color at the table, need more parents at the table when making decisions about laws and in regards of like policies at the school district level, in the school level. Every school has different policies. So definitely need more parents, more people of color. It is hard when you go into the office and the front desk women, they've been there for 30 years and they're set in their ways and they treat you a certain type of way because of this. I think definitely bringing people more up to, I guess, what would be considered the times. A lot of people are, still, like I said, set in their ways. They've been doing this for a long time. They're back in, 1990 laws or 1970 laws. Like, this is 2021. Every day is changing, growing, but we definitely have strength in numbers, as Shereese has always told me, and having more people at the table. I would want a place where my children and all children, because they are our future, feel welcomed, where they feel safe, where they can speak their truth. I know that I've testified before about, having less police officers there and more people that can de-escalate a situation, more counselors, more nurses. And I remember when I was growing up, there was nurses in every school. Now, like, the nurses here on Mondays and Thursdays and only for a short period of time. And they just have people that float in and out. So definitely a safer community for our children, a safer place, just somewhere where they feel comfortable, somewhere where they can, be themselves and not be judged, not be, oh, I'm gonna, because they're 2 minutes late, as I was trying to tell Shereese, like, hearing their stories is nothing compared to mine. Like, it's so heartbreaking hearing the things that they're going through. But yeah, I would definitely say more parents, more people of color, more also having teenagers, people that are my son, he's 12, he's my oldest, having them at the table too, so we can hear what they want and what they want to see in school to make them feel better, and make them feel more welcomed, you know, high schoolers and stuff. So thank you.
May I add? May I speak? Shereese, your facilitator.
Yeah, go ahead, Emijah.
I wanted to just reinforce the whole thing about how how policy is created, in a sense that, you know, somebody who's usually not impacted makes decisions, and then we have all this I'm sure it was unintentional, the devastation that has occurred, but some of it just clearly wasn't thought about. I think the bill is named after a child that did not have a great experience, but had a different, so the policy was written, I think, for an interest of the child's experience, the Becca bill. But what I'm finding too often, sometimes things are written for just one group and not taken into the considerations of the impact on others. And what I'm saying here with the Becca bill, and why we're bringing our experiences, we're here to share our experiences, hope to enlighten, but at the same time, not trying to hope that you get it. If you don't have my experience and you don't understand the walk through my world, you can't quite get it. You need me to work with you in partnership. You need someone like us to work with you in partnership to create a good policy that doesn't cause more devastation. I really want to underscore the fact that the education system first is steeped in racism. All these institutions are. So as we move forward with the best of intent and trying to figure out something for a family, we do need to address the harms of institutional and structural racism, and how one's walk through the world might support it and uphold that system, or actually can dismantle that system. So I don't want our stories, if you hear them, they're similar. Although we look a little different, I think that we all have children that would be probably placed in the Black box, the Black racial category. That's one thing that I think we have in common here as mothers on this screen. And so to me, this speaks that it doesn't work for Black families. And I appreciate what's been happening over the decades of this bill. Some things are being straightened out here, you know, trying to take out the criminalizing or the carcerated portion for juveniles. But how about you just relook at the whole policy and really bring it in right? Because even though, at least in King County, the courts are trying to send families back, that's discretionary. King County courts, juvenile, adult courts still disproportionately harm Black and Indigenous folks in our Latino families. That's just what it is. That's what the data shows. So trying to do this pinch by pinch and slow, talking about it's hard, it's not. It's pinch by pinch and slow because there's somebody that don't want to change the current setup because it's working for them. And if you're here doing this work, right, and you're not working and taking leadership from those most impacted, you got to ask yourself, what is your intent as a person who does care about children? I think you're here because you care about children and you care about family. But what is my role that's causing harm or actually helping? And who am I in tandem with? So the South King County Discipline Coalition has just offered you a great resource, but not to be tokenized for our stories and our pain. The impact that school had on me and my experience with my son, my older son's in kindergarten, who is now in high school, the impact of what I went is that there is staff from that elementary school at a different school in high school that I do not want to take my child to, because I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to trigger my children. My children went from being harassed, our family being harassed, not wanting to be at school, not feeling good about themselves, and a mother who really cared and said, I'm going to pour back into you because you will not lose your love for learning. We will not allow this. It took me saying, okay, I don't care what they're talking about no more. I'm going to focus on the love for us, and we're going to be a stronger family together. I had to not rely on the resources that were at the school, and I don't rely on the education system anyways to make my children great. I rely on my community and the relationships in my community to do that. But my community is holding me so I can go into the institution and bear with it. And that's the part that's not healthy for us. So this Becca bill, although it's tied in with education, is too tightly tied and intertwined with the juvenile and family courts and the welfare child system. And we know what those systems do to Black and Indigenous families in particular. We know how they serve us, and they don't serve us well. They don't value our families. They don't value our children in that way. They're quick to keep us separate. There's a current Supreme Court case that's moving through the Supreme Court right now for Black families of why the family should be first to get our children. So I'm not saying this because I'm just an individual. I had a real experience, but I'm seeing it play out every day. And I get pain from hearing other people's stories because it's not new pain. It's generational, historical in this country. It's hundreds of years old. And we're sitting here kind of rationalizing. How about we just start over? How about we just stop sending kids to juvenile? How about we just stop sending families to family court for school, and we really get the resources that they need, as another parent shared? How about we just do that? Thank you.
Thank you, Emijah. Latae, I'd like to give you the floor, even though you had said a few things that would work and been better. Would you like to close us out?
Sure. I was just gonna, someone had made a comment in the chat, and I was just gonna say, that was one of the things that I had written down. I would greatly desire non-fear-based strategies. The threat of jail, you know, is a real fear for us, because I myself was a child that dealt with capophobia, which is the extreme fear of the police due to seeing my father attacked, racially profiled and attacked multiple times as a child before they had the cameras. And so that fear honestly was passed down to my children as well. So whenever there was a threat of court or the police, there's this fear that I think a lot of African-American people don't speak of, but it is real. There's a terror that we feel, you know, we would shake and cry, and all of us would be still when the police would go past us in a car, because we would have this fear of, will today be the day? And so the whole police thing and the court thing was a real fear for our family, I can say. And I would have liked to see, which I did try and embrace I would like to see stronger family school official relationships, like even if it was the counselor. I think they said that there was like the person who in the chat said something about a mental health concierge or something of that nature. But some type of welcoming relationship where the parents are not made to feel like an outsider, where it's more, we're more informed and we actually, you know, are involved rather than us being on the outside looking in. It's about our voice being heard. And I was always, since childhood, they used to check my hearing every year at Latae Elementary because I was so loud. Since childhood, I was always wanting to be heard. And it's because my voice was not being heard. I was always talking loud. I was wanting to be heard from being ignored. And I did experience that even as an adult woman going up to the school when my son was having extreme behaviors. I would come and actually sit in the classroom. I was self-employed, so it took away from my business. It took away from our finances, but I needed to be there so that I could be a witness to what was actually going on instead of just taking their word for it. And there was one particular instance that I can say where my voice was not being heard. I was speaking up saying, I'm not comfortable with this teacher. This teacher seems to be really hyper focused on my child and even began to give gifts to my child. And my kids were latchkey kids, which I stressed the last time, and actually came to my home and gave my son a gift. I, for lack of better terms, came to the school, and I'm loud anyway, and I was assertive. I went off. I came to the school and I went off and I said that this was unacceptable. And I did not want this man, this adult man coming to my home, and I was not comfortable with it. Well, it was dismissed. What I was talking about, what I was trying to get them to see that I was not comfortable with. And this is just an example of my voice not being heard. They did not listen to me. But just a couple months later, this particular teacher in the Tacoma School District at Whitman Elementary was accused of sexual molestation of boys. And I, as a mom, could feel something wasn't right. Everything in me said, hey, I'm not comfortable with this. I need to see what's happening in the classroom. Something's not right. He's focusing on my child too much. I felt that. And I knew that it wasn't racism. It just wasn't sitting well with me. And I just want you to know that the teacher was actually charged. He was pulled out of the school, and it was his wife, who was my daughter's teacher at the time. My daughter's kindergarten teacher was his wife, who turned him in. So really, I just want to say our voices are not being heard in crucial times. They were so crucial, but someone else spoke up. And I just need to say that it was not a Black mother that spoke up, and her voice was heard. And there were charges brought against this person, and they stuck. It was a real thing. It wasn't an imagined situation. And so the urgency, even my hands are shaking thinking about it now, that we were just that my son becoming a victim. He was literally grooming my child, and there was no protection for my kid. Even when I came up in the school, I was deemed as the angry Black mom, which I was. I do want to say that day I was angry because I felt targeted. And so the voice of not just the kids, the voice of the parents the family needs to be heard, because there are situations continuing to rise up and show up that where people of color voice, they're being ignored. And I really want to see something different happen. I really do. And I really pray that this makes a difference, and that it won't be just a waste of time, not to be rude or anything, but that our voices will actually be heard, and that something will be received from this and taken from this. And thank you for listening. I know I'm long-winded.
Nah, I could not have wrapped that up even better on the end. We're not here for lip service. We're not here to re-traumatize ourselves for a show. We're here in order to move action, to change policy. Like what could be done better is to listen, not you decide what you feel is best for my family, right? Because of the fact that, the answer I got when we were losing somebody that was just a person to you, but was our world, was that people pass, right? We're still trying to recover from this. Another thing I want to say is, one thing I learned from the pandemic is, before, my daughter used to have extreme bouts with throwing up. I ended up finding out later on it was anxiety. And every time that, the kids throw up, like they're not supposed to go to school for 24 hours. But that was something that was deemed punishable for me when I was that vice president for the PTA. I was that mom involved. Nobody had no conversation with me, but what they did is they sent me that court paper in the mail. I say all that to say this. One thing my daughter doesn't have anymore is that bad anxiety. She's not throwing up constantly before going to school. The reason why that was a big thing for her is they had an SRO in the elementary school that was supposed to be there in order to build relationships with the kids. But he was having the adverse effect for my daughter, right? It was fear. She was scared every time that he was going to be there, because she didn't understand, if he was there to be my friend, why was he there with the gun and the taser? I say all that to say now, no vomiting. She still has anxiety, but it's not to the point where it's crippling her. So I hope that you guys not only learn from us, You take these stories when you deal with these parents, you take these stories when you look at that data, you take these stories and actually start building something that works for all and not just for some. And at that, I'm gonna close and I'm gonna hand it back to Dan and Karen.
I think you all have said everything, most critical messages we could. So I appreciate everyone's attendance today and listening and witnessing what the South King County Discipline Coalition and the families and the moms here had to say today. We'll give you a couple extra minutes of your lives back. I don't know if the Becca conference folks need to step in, but appreciate everyone's attendance.
Gina and Barb.
Yes, I'm here.
Would you like to close us out?
Certainly, I want to thank our speakers for their powerful, honest stories, and I am not giving lip service. I've lived this from being on the court end of things, so I'm at the whole other end of the spectrum in Pierce County, and we have a parents' council that I met with while I was at juvenile court, so I could hear their perspectives, where they were coming from, what worked and didn't work for them. And I just want you to know that you should please keep doing what you're doing. We also need to work very, very closely with our legislators, because I think that's also a big group that does not always hear the voices they need to hear before they act. And it makes profound things happen that are very, very hard to undo. But I want to thank you, and I want to thank everyone for staying and listening to these amazing stories. And with that, that does conclude today's conference session, and we will see everyone tomorrow.
Thank you all. Please do the feedback survey. Thank you very much.